Hi everyone. I'll try to keep things short because it's been a long day and I think we've got a bit of time to make up. 10 years ago, I never would have imagined I'd be talking here about having done anything different with my career. I, like most people, hated my internship, but just one of those necessary things that I had to get through to get to the rest of that career that I dreamed of. So after my internship, the next logical step was to choose a fellowship, because what else do you do? And I got bored easily. So I thought GP, ED, paediatrics, something like that. So I did a couple of years in ED as an RMO and then did GP training. And initially that was a very welcome change. It was great to get out of the hospital system. It was a steep learning curve and it had its challenges, but I could see that by the end of GP training, when I had my fellowship, you have a lot of control and I could turn it into something that I really wanted. So there I was off on that path. And then a series of events happened that really made me stop and reconsider everything. So at this time, I had just finished nursing my mum through breast cancer. During that time, 2 of my aunties also had breast cancer. I'd had 4 kids in 4 years, so all my time studying and working, I was very aware of that taking time away from my kids. My husband's job was in a bit of turmoil and uncertainty. I had my own health problems and treatments weren't working, so that was interfering with work as well. So that was the situation at the time. Then it hit the anniversary of my best friend's death. A patient committed suicide, and then I found myself unexpectedly pregnant again. So what did I do next? I knew I could battle on. We all know by this point we've got through so much already with medical school and internship and everything. We know that we can push on and get there. But what I didn't know is whether that was actually what I wanted anymore. And especially because I was aware of what I was giving up, I didn't want to give all of that up and then get there and realise that it wasn't a career that I actually wanted after all. So I stopped, and like Ash was talking about right at the beginning of the day, about stopping and reevaluating everything and reflecting on what we like and what we don't like. And that's what I really spent a lot of time doing at that point. I really made everything up for grabs. So I took everything in my life and basically questioned why it was there and did it need to be there, so that everything that was left there was something that I had deliberately chosen, whether it was for passion or for more practical reasons. And through that process, I realised that something that I had started about 12 months earlier was perhaps something that I wanted to pursue more. So I'd started a blog and just a little bit of side work on the area of mental well-being and stress and burnout. And so, yeah, I realised that that's where my real interest laid more than my general practice. So a lot of those things that had happened around that time had really made me aware of my mortality and the mortality of those around me. I was potentially high risk for some of those illnesses, and I think we're all very good at delayed gratification, and we work hard and sacrifice a lot for some kind of future time, whether that's fellowship or some other point where we think that it's all going to kind of fall into place and become worth it. And I just became very aware that that future time may never actually even come. So the reason that I called the talk, Did I Have It All Backwards, is because it was around this time that there was a big mental shift for me. So instead of looking at some of the things that I took for granted, like my job, as having to be in my life, and then how do I fit in everything else in those little bits that remain around that, I flipped it completely and instead just started with the core values that I had. And did I have them in my life? I thought about what would somebody else from the outside looking in think about my life. Would they be able to tell what my values were by where I was putting my time and effort? And I realised they probably actually wouldn't. So now that we've come to this point, I decided that I did want to leave GP training and that I really did want to build that side interest. But could I actually bring myself to leave? There were so many things holding me back. What would other people think was a big one? My dad's a GP. What would he think? Would I even still be a doctor if I left? And was my training all a waste? So the sunk cost fallacy that a few people have talked about today. And perhaps one of the biggest ones was I found myself getting bored a lot earlier in my career. What if I did this and left training and then realised I didn't like what I was doing then either? Then what would I do? Then I'd be really stuck. And I just happened then to come across a couple of career coaches online. So there's Jocelyn Lowinger, who I don't think she's actually here today, and then another one in the UK. And I chatted to them, and at that point I found having the opinion of an external, or not so much an opinion, but somebody to prompt me in a different way to discuss things and to challenge my thoughts got me to making a decision a lot faster than what I was making on my own. So decision made, I was excited, but I was also feeling a little bit scared and lonely, and a bit like that goldfish out of the bowl, or someone with the man walking off on the path on their own. I didn't know anyone else who'd not gone for a standard fellowship. Jocelyn then reached out and was discussing some of the same things about the challenges of not being on a standard fellowship pathway and how isolated she'd felt. She'd been in that situation for a lot longer. And so that's when we started the NonClinical Facebook group, NonClinical Doctors Group. And that was just amazing, the number of people who joined so quickly with that. A lot of people feeling dissatisfied and just wanting to look at other options, but also a lot of people who had already been working outside of these fellowship pathways. And all of a sudden I felt like I belonged somewhere again, that I wasn't just on my own and a little bit strange, but other people felt the same way as me. And that gave me confidence to move forward with it. I felt like I had support. And also that if what I was doing didn't work out, that there are lots of other options out there other than going back to clinical medicine if I didn't want to. And being here today, seeing people in real life, that you're not just mythical creatures on Facebook, but you actually exist, again, just makes me feel more part of a group of people who think the same. What am I actually doing now? So I basically work in the area of things like burnout and stress and self-care. I run workshops and do talks, so in workplaces, community groups, workshops just to the public. I do a little bit of one-on-one work as well over telehealth. And for me, this is a combination of all the things that I enjoy the most, that I have a passion for, that I feel like I'm good at. And it gives me a lot of fulfillment. I really enjoy working with people, and that was one of the things I was worried about leaving clinical medicine, but through the one-on-one work and workshops and things, I have a lot of contact with people. I really enjoy art, and so I teach people ways to use artistic expression in lots of different forms for their well-being. I enjoy writing, so writing in the blog, and I'm working on a book at the moment. I like that I have a lot of control over what I do. I can choose what I want to take on and what I don't want to take on. And I can fit it in around my kids sometimes. Sometimes I have to bring them with me. And I even find time to do things like volunteer, which I don't even know when was the last time I found time to do something like that. It certainly hasn't been without its challenges. One of the challenges that I found is that there's no fixed work time and home time, and because I've always got all these ideas about things that I'd love to do, it's very easy for me to just work more and more and try and squeeze more in, and for then it to encroach on time that I want to spend with my family or doing other things. So I have to be very conscious of that and trying to rein it in and having boundaries on how much time I want to spend working. Finances has also been a challenge, and I think a few people have alluded to that today with starting your own business or anything. It can be really hard initially, and I guess in some ways I was in the good position of being on maternity leave. I didn't actually have to have a wage that was contributing to a mortgage or anything, so it was okay to be able to take that more slowly, but that has been a challenge. And the person talking about Ikigai early on, I feel like that's sort of the missing piece so far, that I have all those other elements, but really what I need to work on next is making sure that it's actually financially viable and that I can support my large family. And the third challenge has been things like APRA requirements and CPD and in medical indemnity insurance, that often I find speaking to people and just trying to sort out those practicalities is they don't really know what to do with you, and you don't fit neatly in any particular box, and it can just take a long time trying to sort out what should be quite simple. And sometimes I've got to the end of it and still not really been exactly sure and just sort of hoping that I've got it right. So a couple of tips based on my experiences. One was some advice that I received early on, which was to try to avoid making irreversible changes. So, for example, leaving a training program, if there's any way to take leave first before actually just resigning. A lot of people tend to just resign or make decisions in the moment. And so I did that. I took leave first, and then once I'd really made up my mind, then I withdrew. So just keeping as many doors open as you can. Be bold in questioning everything. I just think it's such a valuable thing to do that it's easy to, well, I found it easy anyway, to almost resent things that were in my life for practical reasons and not because I liked them. And when I really questioned them and thought through them, that process of keeping them there because I valued them for whatever reason and it being a conscious decision was very helpful. I'm also quite naturally risk averse, and the idea of leaving a set pathway was quite a big thing for me. And something that someone had suggested I do that I found helpful was imagining the worst case scenario, or a realistic kind of worst case scenario of what could happen. And so I did that in terms of, finances or whatever I was going to do next not working out, and then thinking about specific things that you could do to overcome it or whether you could overcome it. And once I had that sort of list, we like lists, a list of specific things that I would do, it made me feel more comfortable that even if I hit what I saw as rock bottom, that it wasn't the end, that there were actually things that I could do to overcome that. And so then I felt much more comfortable taking those risks. So I guess the big thing for me was just feeling isolated early on, and I really enjoy through the NonClinical Facebook group. A lot of people contact me, and I'm really happy to help out. So if anyone's feeling like they're in that kind of position and feeling like they're not sure what to do next, I certainly don't have all the answers, but if you just want another person to chat through things with, then please do reach out. Thank you.